Welcome to the FATED Connections Path of Exile community podcast number 55. Today we're back after a long wait and we all got some great experiences in the first week of Expedition League to share. And not only are we joined by BalorMage after all this time, but we got Grimro here again from the podcast that we did the first week in the last league, in Ultimatum, and Tarke, who's also been here a lot of times, and you probably know him from other podcasts where he likes to make appearances. Welcome, everyone. Balor, what have you been up to?
I made a huge, horrible mistake. I decided the league start as an int stacking wonder. It's only been a real build for like a day and a half now. It was a struggle.
Ambitious.
There's been I was over ambitious. I was like, I'm really good at making currency. I bet I can pull all this together in like 2 days. It'll be like a struggle for like 1.5 days. And I will just snipe all the int gear that I need. And I was looking at it like everything will be fine. I'll have like 1,300 int on by the end of the day too. Nope. I've been unable to kill bosses for like the first 6 days of the league, which is not a good way to make money in the softcore. If you're just not able to kill bosses, that's not a great plan. So I regret that, and I will never ever do it again.
But you're getting strength stacking next league, right?
Oh God.
Honestly, that was recommended to me. Strength stacking Bone Shatter Juggernaut.
There you go, Balor.
Hard no. Just going to go back to my normal league starts that can, kill everything but feared on like day 2 with nothing, except when I pick up off the floor. Like if I can kill everything except feared with just stuff off the floor, that's what I normally start with. And then I decided int stacking wonder was the go. No. It was a bad idea.
But it's great if streamers do something like if they set themselves like if you don't pick the low-hanging fruit, but you go for an ambitious goal on league start. It's cool to watch.
It was ambitious. Yeah. It was ambitious. There are some clips of me spending a little bit over a minute on a map boss.
That's not that long, honestly. Like I think that's not too bad. 1 minute is okay.
It's pretty bad.
What are you killing your bosses with, Grim? Saw some minion action this league?
Yeah. So I decided to pick up Soul Rest. It was recommended to me by someone in my chat. He had played it in the previous league. And it looked pretty good. So, yoink, mine now. So I decided to pick that one up. And it did really well. The goal was to take down bosses, the opposite of BalorMage. So we got that done. And then, the main reason I picked it though is because it seemed to dodge most of the nerfs, specifically the mana one. If you guys didn't know, Soul Rest is based off of triggering skills, but it only needs to trigger them with no links. So it's really, really cheap. So it was pretty good.
Did you manage to get sub 1 minute boss close?
Yeah.
Okay,
sub 1 minute, yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
How long did it take for you to get the staff itself?
We got it like in the first 16 hours, yeah. So it wasn't too bad. The cool thing about that stuff though is you don't need to 6-link it. It kind of comes 6-linked because you only need to put the gems in it.
7-link.
So it's like, yeah, pretty much. It's like a super duper cheap build, and it can do most of the content in the game pretty well. And it's really, really good for logbooks as well, I might add. Yeah.
It's nice. Tarke, do you want to share
no
your secrets of league starting?
No, I came here just to be pretty. I didn't come here to talk. So I decided to league start on Explosive Concoction because it looked terrible, and I'm like, it's probably really bad. I played it till Act 4 and was like, yeah, that was really bad. So I ended up playing Traps. Explosive Concoction, it's a weird skill. It's basically just a bad trap skill, and that's kind of why I wanted to league start it, because people were really hype about it. But it has the exact same mechanics of traps, but worse. And I wanted to make a video like, you realize this is just a bad trap skill. But then I just play traps. So I've been playing Seismic Trap and Exsanguinate Trap. Exsanguinate Trap to bypass the mana changes, and it's just a good build. It was a good build last league. And the buff Seismic Trap is really strong. And fun tidbit for anyone playing the build in Trade League, they forgot to update the alternate quality. So one of the alternate qualities for Seismic Trap is minus 60% cast speed, 100% increased damage, but cast speed doesn't do anything anymore, so you just get 100% increased damage, which is pretty good.
It's nuts.
But yeah, no, it's been going well.
Amazing. Yeah, I did a little bit of seismic trapping as well. Actually, 2 characters where I wanted to do like a poison version of the seismic trap thing instead of Ellie conversion, or what you are doing, which is pure fizz, right?
Yeah.
With a sanguinate setup, X-sanguinate setup. But I made a stupid mistake. I did the no logout challenge that Zizran and Steelmage and other people did, and it's like, oh man, it was continuously getting worse. Day 1, I died in mudflats. That was cool. And then I went into maps with the character. I was leveling a Bane Blight Occultist, and I died to the most silly shit, like getting myself into a corner in an indoor map and realizing, oh shit, movement skills have cooldowns now. I can't escape. Hey, I want to log. Oh no, I can't log. And I was dead. And since then, it just went downhill. Every single rip has been another slap in my face. It's been humiliating. It went from that rip to a rip in Delve, where I couldn't follow the cart because I got stuck in monsters. And then the last rip I had was actually dying to lab traps. I died to Burning Rage because I couldn't smoke mine away, and I obviously couldn't log. So
are you having fun?
Surprisingly, yes, because the
go.
campaign leveling is cool and stuff like that. So I wanted to practice and spend a lot of time there anyway. But yeah, Seismic Trap is really strong, and I want to revisit it, but I died twice, and now I don't have any Trapper gear. Now I'm full circle back on Cold Dot Occultist.
Okay, can I just say quickly, what is Trapper gear? Because people keep telling me, like, oh, you can't play Traps this league, it's super expensive. If you're in Trade League, it's the gloves, right? But in SSF, Trapper gear is literally just like a wand with spell damage. Like, that's the only thing you need.
Well, to be fair, when my first character...
Yeah, I've never had the gloves, and I play Traps every league in SSF fine, doing all the content. There's no such thing as Trapper gear. I don't know.
I think, okay, everyone tells me that the build sucks unless you have the gloves and Tinkerskin on. That's basically what I've been told. Just full stop. It can't do like imitations, like, you know, the Elder Guardians.
I mean, that's complete. So I know, but like, so last league I was playing Ice Trap Raider, and Raider just straight up has like 25% less damage than Sab because it's a Raider and you just do it to zoom. And yeah, I did everything with just SSF gear, and I've been doing it for like however many leagues now. I think the thing is like, I don't even think Tinkerskin is a good chest. The only reason I kind of like Tinkerskin now is because it's harder to get phasing uptime. So that's where I'm like, oh, it's slightly better. But if you could just use like a +1 or a crit chest, I would use that over Tinkerskin every day.
Fair enough. Now, for me, it was really when I decided to reroll the Trapper after my first character died. I had a pair of Deerstalker, and knowing that Seismic Trap has a long cooldown and I won't be instantly able to get the cooldown recovery, and it will take a while till that is my main skill, or probably always will need a supplementary skill. I used Deerstalker, and I wanted to do some Bladefall trap setup, but turns out Bladefall poison is really, really bad and gets outclassed by Bladefall decay. Pretty much any setup, no matter how hard you spec into poison, it's pretty devastating. Especially since I leveled the entire first character without realizing that, but then the second one I did it good. So we're learning, we're improving. But to talk a little bit about the new changes in 3.15, how did you perceive the new balance starting off in Act 1 and going into Endgame? Do you still feel it, or how was the progression? Who wants to start?
Go on, Grim.
I died.
Your name's not Grim, Balor.
Oh,
go on, Grim.
Okay. So I don't really have the best perspective on this because I started the league leveling with my friends. So we kind of just annihilated the entire story with a 3-man. But I have re-leveled my second character now. And honestly, Act 1, with the exception of Brutus, who feels a little bit unfair, honestly feels fine to me. I don't like the freeze, obviously. I don't know if anyone's gotten permafrozen. That feels a little bit unfair. But overall, I don't know. I think it feels okay. There is an issue with the monsters in maps, though. I will say that.
You mean the Act 1 monsters?
Yeah, I still think I still think some of them are a little bit over the top. Specifically, the leap slam goats, like they just one shot you a lot of the
Even
time.
after the nerf.
Yeah, at least for me. I don't know. I play squishy builds. Maybe I'm just a loser. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I haven't made it into maps to verify it, so who's the loser here? But yeah. Balor, what do you want to say about the balance changes?
I died a lot more than I was expecting to while leveling. Like several times. We kind of cheated our way through bosses though, because we just single tagged bosses and then ported 3 more people on top of it. So I actually don't know how any of the bosses go, because they're all just 1-man health with 4 people on them, so they just fell over. I'm going to level another character this weekend, so I'll find that out. But
I mean, it's only the Act 1 bosses that changed, right?
I think
is it?
Well, all health as well.
Yeah,
Like
but
health...
it tapers off pretty aggressively. I don't know. It's like it was something like 50% at the start, which then tapers down. So it's kind of
like down to 0 in 84 content.
Is that it feels very weird that they started with Act 1, because there's a significant damage, like difficulty decrease when you get to Act 2.
Yeah,
and that's weird. Why wouldn't you start at the end and work your way back to Act 1?
I said the same thing in a video. It's especially because it's one of those things, as well as it would be, as you say, much smoother difficulty curve if they worked backwards, because you'd be working into the harder content. And it would also be less jarring, because you do have that thing of like, you go to Act 2, it's like
everything's easy again.
Yeah, but by the just one sentence real quick. By the time I was in Act 4, I didn't notice anything anymore from the changes. But please, Grim.
I have a few points. So I think the reason I started with Act 1 is obviously from a marketing perspective. Like, you want the entrance to the game to be as attractive as possible, or as brutal as possible in this case. And my second point would be that if you play a skill like Toxic Rain, or like, anything with flat damage scaling, I feel like, most of the time it's going to be pretty easy to get through the campaign. But like I had a friend who was playing the new, what is it, Storm Rain? They had a nightmare time. It was awful because, if you don't get the right items at the right time, it's just trash. You have no flat damage scaling. So yeah, I think there's maybe something that they need to address there, maybe potentially.
I feel that's a big problem. Act 1 was already difficult before, but now when you're a new player and you don't use any third-party resources in order to find out how to play the game, and you're playing with like a 1-linked heavy strike or something like that, no chance. You're gonna get obliterated so hard. And I would have preferred it if Act 2, 3, 4 would get a little bit more attention, because it's honestly always Act 1 that gets a lot of stuff, and it should be nice and beautiful and welcoming. But for the difficulty, I think it would have been much better if Dominus and like Scepter of God returned to its old glory.
I mean, you'll get that. You just need to wait a year, because this next league is Act 2, and the league after that is Act 3. So I've done Act 1 4 times now. I did it twice in some like early testing. I've done it twice on live. And other than the rowers and mudflats, because I will say the rowers and mudflats are spooky now, I can't really tell the difference. Saying that, it's, again, I completely agree with what Grimro said. Like, all the clears I've done have been on stuff like Split Arrow, which has flat damage on it, Explosive Trap, and then like Spectral Helix, which are all just like good skills. If you were to do it on, I don't know, Lightning Tendrils, you'd have a pretty bad time. But if you do anything on Lightning Tendrils, you're gonna have a pretty bad time. So I don't know.
Yeah, the points being raised in chat by Pi, that I wonder if Act 1 needs to be welcoming, when the whole point was to be like, this is gritty and PoE. But then honestly, do you want to like bait people into thinking that the game is harder than it is in Act 1? And then when it that's always what bothers me. Is I would have loved the difficulty to be in Act 4 at its peak.
We're kind of splitting hairs, because they've said we want to change all of these things, and we've just picked to do it in this order, and we're like, how dare you pick it in the wrong order? And they're like, well, we'll get to it like when we get, no, do it in the... I agree, I would have preferred if they started backwards and worked forwards, but it's kind of like whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would have changed would be that they should have reworked the gems on offer in Act 1 to be a little bit more beginner friendly, with like flat damage scaling. Please do that.
I don't think they ever will, sadly, but no, I do agree. They need to fix that stuff up.
So are people only having problem with? I feel like maps are also much harder now.
I can't tell the difference.
Like it's not that I did start with an absolute trash build, so maybe that is the problem.
Player
Like,
power is
I'm trying
going
to account for
down.
that.
League start int stacking. 1 minute boss kills.
Like, I'm trying to account for that though. Like, but maybe it is just that much weaker than my normal league starts. Maybe I just can't.
Okay, so I'll put my tinfoil hat on here. I actually did have a bit of a tough time before I got the staff, the Solra staff, in white maps. I think that could be for a few reasons, but it was tough. And I also did run out of white maps for the first time ever. I didn't have any white maps until I got to Zana, and everyone in my group also ran out, which was kind of weird. Well, my group of friends, I wasn't playing directly with them, but yeah. They all ran out too. I was chatting to them on Discord, and it was a bit weird. But yeah, I know what you mean, Balor. It was a bit rough.
My map sustain was a bit iffy this league. I mean, it was a bit iffy last league as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, only at the start. Like, after you get like your Zana and Awakening levels and all sorts of stuff like that, you're swimming in them. They're all over the place. But before that, it's a little bit touch and go.
This is the first time I've bought more than one map off Kirik, and I emptied him, and so did several of the people I was playing with. Like, we need tier 1 maps. We don't even have those.
Wow.
I don't want to go back to the campaign.
Yeah.
Like, we made it, but it was very rough right at the beginning.
I think I bought like one tier 1 map from Kirik, and then last league I had a little bit more of a struggle breaking into tier 3s and then into yellows. But this league, even on blue maps, I did fine, but I guess it's all RNG. Sometimes it just works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
It probably also has to do with how people were approaching the league mechanic. Because I definitely noticed a shift. I think most people probably did this, where like they started on focusing all the chests and kind of ignoring the skull markers. And now everyone's kind of been like, oh, you want to get all the runic monsters, go for all the skulls and ignore the chests. So it might have been a thing as well of like, we were doing the league mechanic wrong, so we're getting less like returns in that sense, which might have impacted things.
I haven't gotten a one map from the league mechanic. I've never gotten
Neither
one.
I. Not a single map.
I'm pretty sure I've gotten them, but I could be. It might have just been like I killed something while clearing out an expedition, but I'm pretty sure I've gotten maps. I don't know.
I haven't spent enough time in maps.
I don't remember more than. I don't remember any maps. I don't remember any map drops from the
A
league
guy in
mechanic
chat is saying Bala has. It was just allocated to me. Don't know if he's memeing you. But.
I mean, maybe. He was the person I was playing with.
Well, that would make sense then, wouldn't it?
Maybe. Maybe there's been
because
it doesn't drop
because the chests literally say that monsters drop more maps. Yeah, I know they drop maps because there's literally modifiers saying they drop more maps.
Actually, they don't. That's a bugged modifier.
Oh, really?
It's still bugged. Yeah, first 3 or 4 days doesn't do anything.
Oh, scrap that then.
No maps. I actually stopped doing the league mechanic for a while until it got its recent buff.
Yeah, same with me.
It didn't really scale. Like, it felt really good. And then by the time you got to tier 16s and started juicing, it was just as much as if I was in a tier 1 map that was blue, and it just didn't get better.
I'm curious about that. Did that also apply to the rerolls? Like, when you're in that high content, your character is like 90 plus, do the vendors give like significantly better stuff? Because I noticed really early on that the NPCs give you an insane amount of they let you bypass an insane amount of progression. I think it's like up to 6 levels or so. So really early on, I was able to get like item level 75 plus gear from the gambling and from ROG. I think I remember Yoji actually pointing out on Twitter that he got a Val Regalia level 75 before he entered maps. Or something like that. I don't know whether it was 75 plus, but definitely.
Have you guys gotten higher than eye level 84 stuff off the vendors? I don't think I have.
No.
Nope.
Yeah.
But I haven't been running plus level watchstones yet, so I don't know if I'm doing 86 maps, maybe it'll go higher. I don't know.
Oh,
haven't
what?
actually
So
put-
like if the reroll token kind of has its own eye level attached to it or something.
Yeah, like maybe, or maybe it does it according to the
rerolls are
last
based on your
place you were
character
in.
level, no?
I don't know.
No, I don't think it works that way, Bella.
The
I'm
rerolls are
hoping it
based on
does.
character level.
It might just be character level, in which case it just stays there.
I mean, explicitly says that, and unless, like Tarke said, there's some weird way where it's ingrained in the currency item, which it can't be, obviously.
There's a
Few
few
people
people in
can-
chat saying they've gotten like 85s,
Yeah.
86s, yeah.
86
So far,
is
the
it?
highest I've gotten has been an 84.
Yeah, I've only seen a few of them too. It's mostly 83s for me.
That's I mean, Grim can probably talk about this a lot more because he's messed around with the league mechanic. The thing which I always find quite interesting about leagues like this is they're quite hard to evaluate in terms of how rewarding they are based on just like random anecdotal stuff, because you can do the mechanic very wrong. And that I always find quite interesting. I don't know, Grim, what do you think on that sense?
Oh boy. Okay, so the lead mechanic is a bit of a funny one. So for anyone not willing to actually like trade, I would say it's one of the least rewarding mechanics there has ever been. Overall,
if you're not willing to trade.
Yeah, if you're not willing to liquidate the currency you haven't traded to other players, you're not going to be able to get any immediate value. Like, yeah, you could gamble a unique off Gwennen. Okay, yeah, you could craft your own unique, your items off Rogue. But overall, I think it's like if you compare it to something like Ritual, which just dumps loot on you or good rares on you, it's like very immediate. With Expedition, it's so obfuscated, right? You have to go through all these vendors. You need to have the know-how to use Rogue. You need to know what bases to go for on Gwennen. Like the only one that really like is like explanatory is the Haggler, and big surprise, his currency is worth 5 times as much as Gwennen on softcore trade. But
That makes sense.
No, I think that's an interesting sentiment that you made. Like, if you're not willing to trade, because especially in SSF and especially for like people who don't engage a lot with trade, I thought the league mechanic is exceptionally good, at least early on when you enter maps, when you get into mid-tier maps. Like I said, huge bypass of progression. Not only higher bases, also from I think it was from Tujen that I got, I think, a tier 8 map while I was still in tier 2 maps or something like that.
Yeah, I found it good. So from the softcore SSF perspective, I found it very rewarding. But like that's the thing, most league mechanics are very rewarding if you play SSF. Gwennen, who is definitely the weakest, is still somewhat attractive in the sense you can use it to target farm uniques, and you get quite a lot of influence bases off that early and cheating eye level stuff. Rogue is very good at just randomly giving you like 5 tier 1 rares that you normally just wouldn't get otherwise. So you know, again, it's like in an SSF, it's like, yo, that's pretty good. In trade day, it's like, whoa, 2 chaos, you know.
Wait,
so
Gwennen gives you influence stuff as well?
Say that again, sorry.
You said Gwennen gives you influence stuff. I wasn't aware. I never got an influence item.
Stuff.
I got random corrupted rares, but
yeah, you can get corrupted rares. You can get random like Shaper influence or whatever. And then Tujen, yeah, it's just getting currency is always nice. I know Dannig is arguably the strongest, but I just find him so boring. It's like you re-roll him. Did I get a logbook? Yay, nay. If yes, I'm excited. Otherwise, boring. Like
in the beginning, I also really liked the reroll currency from Dannig to get the reroll currency for the other guys.
Yeah,
but I guess now that they made it more common, maybe not as needed anymore.
Okay. Just to explain my point earlier, so if you take your average player, right, someone who logs on, who plays, 10 or 20 maps, right, they're gonna get in maps, right? They'll do the mechanic. They're gonna get currency from all of the different vendors, and they'll sit down with each of them. Let's say they sit down with Gwennen, right, and they're just a normal player, like they don't look up spreadsheets and stuff like that. They're gonna click on a bunch of different items. They're gonna get a bunch of blues. Oh well, that sucked. Let me go on to Rogue. Okay. So they're going to open up Rogue. They're going to pick the item they probably need. Like, I'll craft some boots. They're going to get all of this massive amount of jargon, like reroll a prefix 20 times and remove the lowest tier, and like some of these people don't even know to hold alt, right? I'm imagining your average player doesn't probably hold alt on look at the mods. So Rogue's knocked out as well. He's not that useful. It's just basically shooting in the dark with him. So what's left? You have Tujen, which is really good. I think he's really strong for most players. and you have Dannig, which basically is just Tujen again. So you have one vendor, so it's basically Tujen League. So yeah,
I agree with that.
Unless you move the resources onto someone who knows what they're doing, you're not going to be able to realize any of the value from the league mechanic as your average player.
Saying that though, I did get a stack of 3 exalts the other day. So
Wow,
I'm jealous.
Yeah, did you see the guy who got the stack of mirrors? Which is always
No, I
good.
didn't.
No. What?
Yeah, someone got 3.
Oh. That would
That
make my
person is
league
set up
much
for
better.
the league. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Think of all the instacking gear.
Oh no, that build is. I'm re-rolling this weekend.
What are you re-rolling to?
I haven't decided yet. I want to. I've not done heist since Heist League, so I just leveled all my dudes just for the first time. I literally haven't been to the Rogue Harbor since Heist League, so I just finished leveling all my dudes, and I did one grand heist and was like, I need a raider. If I'm going to get involved in this and like figure it out, I need a raider. So that's where it stops. That's the planning I have right now is raider, and then the speedy boy, and then that's it. I got to figure out what to play after that. But it'll be a raider.
Yeah. I do want to just, my closing thought on the league mechanic is, I'm sure some Slipper Gym or someone's going to come out with, loot from gambling, 3,000 Gwennens, here's the rate that you have to get a head on a shavs, also stuff like that. And then everyone's going to be like, oh, so if I just buy all the shavs, I can just, I can get money, like something like that. I'm sure that's going to come out, and then everyone's going to love her, and she's going to be great. But yeah.
Yeah, there was also this infographic that was shared on the Reddit. Someone made that that highlighted some of the valuable bases that you should be gambling on, like the Fiend Dagger for Arakali's Fang and some other things that the average player wouldn't immediately find obvious. Everyone knows Chevron's wrappings, Occultist Vestment, but there's some not so obvious things.
I would definitely agree with what Grim said, though, about knowing how to get the value out of using the vendors. Because, again, it's also one of those points of view, even from an SSF perspective, if you don't know how to leverage, I just got a random, 85 base, and that's still valuable to me because I can do stuff with it. If you're just seeing just, an item with its blue vendor, then, yeah, the league mechanic's really bad. You need to be getting the value out of the base items themselves.
Yeah. I have thought a little bit about it. I was like, okay, so what would I change if I could change anything? And it would be Gwennen. And I was like, what if you added little league mystery boxes? So there's a breach mystery box, and you could gamble on a breach mystery box, and you could get Zolf splinters, or you could get cellular splinters, or you could get a breach stone. That would be super duper understandable for everybody, and you could totally do it. But then I don't know if that goes against their vision. And of course, granted, games don't want solutions; they want problems. That's what they want from players. So I'll keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, I think one thing they could do, which would just help her a little bit, is probably just lower her costs and just bump out the rate it gives influenced items. It would be a very lazy fix, but because they've been a lot more precious recently of handing out league mechanics from league mechanics. So while that would be fun, they would probably be like, we don't want to just be handing out splinters again. So,
I would actually go opposite of what you said, Tarke.
Okay.
I would make it so that it's more expensive, but you have a way higher chance to get influence and unique. Because right now, because of the amount of dice you get and the amount of currency you get, you can literally sit there for 45 minutes and get 35 alterations. It's not fun.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I really like the league, though. I think the league's lit. One thing I did find a little bit funny, because I did a video yesterday, which was my week 1 review sort of thing. And I was like, yeah, I've been having fun. I've been enjoying the league. And people you only enjoy the league because you play slowly. But then last league, what I enjoyed, Ultimatum, you only enjoy the league because you play fast. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. I think, for me at least, this is one of the best gameplay designed leagues they've actually ever created. And the attention to detail, specifically in logbooks, is incredible. Just yesterday, this was a completely unmarked chest, right? I clicked on it, and it just showered me in currency. It wasn't even marked. It wasn't had an icon or anything like that. It was just hidden away. And I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to get the big fungal biome under the expedition.
Oh,
logbooks.
it's so good.
So cool. Yeah.
It's massive. Yeah.
It's massive, yeah. And it's full of runic monsters, which inherit all of the remnants from above the ground. It's just great. And a lot of the bosses, Specifically, I won't spoil it too much. Specifically, the guy who comes out of the glass. Fantastic design. Really, really good. Right up there. So they nailed that.
Yeah, I haven't had any of the bosses yet, sadly, but the logbooks, I think, are the best content they've made. It's something I said in my video yesterday, but like, they could have been so tedious. Like, if you were to just describe it to someone, like, okay, so how do you do a logbook? You've got to place like 50 TNT, run around, scout everything. That sounds like, oh, that could be so terrible. But it really nailed it, and it feels fun in all the way that blighted maps don't. And I enjoy blighted maps, but like, they've really learned their lesson, I think.
Yeah, I quickly want to join the praise for the design as well, because just the expedition encounter itself is so nice. Because one of the first leagues I played live streaming was Abyss League, and I'm still very hyped about every abyss that I find and about chasing that first Diginvise of the league, craft some POG stuff on. And Expedition feels to me like a build your own abyss kind of league, right? Because it's technically an abyss, but then you can choose your own rewards, similar to Legion, and there's also a little bit of infrastructure that you have to place, similar to Blight and Harvest. So it really combines like all the enticing elements of some of my favorite past leagues and puts them together really, really nicely. And I think a general consensus that leagues should have a crafting aspect and should have aspirational content for the end game, and then you have both of those things also covered together with a beautiful league mechanic, and they get to do their fluff that they love to do with the NPCs, with the voice acting and the PoE2 style dialogue windows where you have the little portrait picture. Everything coming together really nicely for this league, really. Yeah. I agree.
Definitely. Yeah. I think the only thing that needs a little bit of tuning is the two vendors we've spoken about, and perhaps maybe some more tangible rewards for people who don't want to immediately engage with the vendors, whether that's, some sort of currency remnant or something like that.
More Splinters?
Pretty much done. No more Splinters, please. Honestly, it's not that bad. I've been conditioned from doing 100% Delirium maps to not complain about that, because you literally spend 10 minutes looting in them. So I ain't complaining about this amount of Splinters, but I understand the issue.
Yeah, it was a little bit weird during leveling. I don't understand the upset about the 20 different currencies in endgame, but while leveling, where you often, do 4, 5, 6, 7 zones in a row without going back and stashing things, and then you have different NPCs appear in different zones, and you have the different currencies all at the same time in your inventory, then it can get a little bit cluttered. But in maps, you always go back in between every 2 maps at max when you get like a Zana. So you don't have that many different currencies. It's okay. And you can also stash them directly at the NPC.
I'm going to go on a rant, but go on, Grim.
I was just going to say, so I'll let you go, but I will say I watched your video, Tarke, on the identifying of the currencies. I was like, damn, he's right. I don't know what the hell any of this stuff means. But after playing the league more, I actually know exactly which one of every currency is for the ones that actually matter. Like the Black Scythe ones, I can tell you exactly what each of them look like just from playing with them. I know which one's which and what they do and what they buy and stuff like that now. So you do get there eventually.
Yeah. So for anyone who didn't watch it, I made a video. It was like art design fail or something. And I was kind of just pointing out how we've got 20 different Splinters that share all the same visual language. They're all the same colors. They're just kind of random abstract shapes. And yeah, you eventually learn, this abstract shape is associated to this thing. But they could have just color coded them or just made it a bit more tangible in the sense of like, because I know that all of the clans just have different clan names, but it's like the Sun Clan, any of the symbol suns? No. Like the big one sort of looks a bit like a sundial is the closest thing to that. And yeah, like you eventually learn it, but it's like if you want players to care about Splinters and you want players to have like, if you want to reduce the amount of friction that players have going into a mechanic, just being like 20 Splinters that all look the same. So.
True. Yep.
To be fair, I
have no idea what any of them do. I just pick all of them up and stash them all, and then when I go to a vendor, it tells me how many I've got of each one. That's when I find out what I've picked up. Is I'll go to the vendor that does gambling, and I'll be like, I've got that many of the gamble token. Great.
Yeah, for me, it's when I click the label on the ground, and then it says exactly what it is, lesser black scythe or whatever. And when it's in my inventory, I don't really care about looking at it and knowing what it is. I'll just click it into the stash, and then it automatically goes to the nice counter.
See,
nothing.
One of the things that I found kind of funny is, so when I made that video, one of the guys said, why does it need to have readable art? It has a name. And I just wanted to be like, like, what's the point of having any sign of anything in life? Just give everything just a tooltip. Why ever have 2D art? Just give everything letters, you know? So it's very important with ARPGs that if you open your inventory, you should at a glance be able to scan everything. And I think it's an absolute failing of like UX and all that stuff if you just,
Well, you can clearly identify all of them as this is the new league currency, but not which one.
Yep. Right, but if you glance at something and you don't know what it is, then that isn't clearly identifiable.
You know it's one of the 4 new league currencies.
One of the 20
new 4 categories, and each have 5 tiers or whatever. What is it, 4x4? Lesser, greater, common, and
grand.
Grand is lesser. Grand, okay.
Yeah, I just don't know what any of them do.
I think this has only just happened recently. Last stream I did, a lot of people had this aha moment. It took the economy a while on software trade to realize that people actually want to buy and sell the expedition currencies. And when people realize that, hey, I've got 3 exalts worth of expedition currency in my locker, and they sell it all, and suddenly they're like, wow, this is the best league ever, you know. And when they see the currency drop in their map, they're like, oh, that's 3C right there, you know. And that's finally made the connection. Yeah.
It's the same thing with Einhar as well. It's like you've got people like this league, it's terrible, but they've got like 20 exalts worth of beasts just rotting away. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that sort of thing generally, Grim, as someone who often like has to dive into the league mechanic stuff? If you were to try and make players see the value of items more, like, was there anything you would change about that? Easy question for you.
That's a really tough one, right? Because most of the you cannot derive the value of anything without testing it, which is something that requires a lot of currency to do. So someone has to like put it all on the line to see if it's good, and like, you know, then the players who have played the game need to consume that information that's put out there, and most of them aren't. So unless it's like this is 5 Chaos Orbs, like ultimatum, it's just never gonna work. Synthesis had this problem as well, like fractured items. No one's gonna know what the hell to do with that shit, are they? But like they could have like a 3 exalt light radius like weapon or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know. So I think I don't know how to solve it, but it's a problem.
Just quickly backtracking on the league currency topic, we do all agree that there is no doubt that we needed that many different currencies. It makes sense that there's different currencies for the different NPCs and for the different tiers of things that they
could have trimmed one. They could have trimmed one for sure.
No, I agree with that. Like it makes sense the way they've set it up, but you didn't need that many. You definitely didn't need that many. You could have gone down to 2 quite comfortably. A reroll token for every vendor, and then a lesser and a grand. Like, I don't know. You didn't need that many.
I would have stuck with 3, but I could see the case for 2 as well.
I think 2 would have been fine.
Because honestly, it's one of those things. They could have done it with just 1, and the league mechanic would have been fine. It's just you would have interacted with the windows less because you'd just be saving them for the key things. You know, it's like no one when they played Ritual said, you know what this league mechanic needed? 5 different types of ritual splinters.
The thing is with that is right. Okay, so let's say you're given a window, right? Let's take the Gwennen, for example, right? So if you guys didn't know, jewels cost only grand. You can only spend grand on jewels. You can only, so you guys all know. But basically, there's a currency for each different type of base type. And if there was one currency, then you would only ever gamble on leather belts.
One.
Yeah, so, and everything would be dictated by that. So there would be no variety. So they did need to have some different amount of them. Like, they were right, but I don't know how many that is.
Yeah, and if it was only one reroll currency for all the vendors, everyone would just reroll the one that offers the most value.
I think having the different rerolls tied to the individual vendor is a good thing. But But it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things of where do you draw the line with that system? Because you could take that argument of this is why we need this many, and you could extrapolate that out. Like they could have had 6, and you could have made a compelling argument. Well, this is why we need 6. There are so many different types of items in Path of Exile. I think it's very much one of those things of they kind of designed themselves into a corner because you need to look at the mechanic as a whole. They chose to design it in the way that is like, we now need 4 different types of currency for the 4 different NPCs. Like there could have just been 1 NPC. They didn't have to be 4. You know, there's lots of things there that you could think about.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't have to be a currency. You could just, like, you gain master missions. There could have been like a counter when you talk to the NPC that goes up. This is how many times you still get to reroll this or that window. It doesn't have to be tied to a currency that is specific. That's true.
Yeah, I'll also introduce another topic here for the floor. What do you guys think of the fact that everyone skips Gwennen and Rogue in maps, and the logbooks for Gwennen and Rogue, if it's exclusively them, don't sell? Everyone doesn't want to do them. Well, basically, they're avoiding them. And
yeah, no,
that means they're
makes
cheap,
sense.
and you can easily make profit with them. No, if no one wants them, that means you can easily buy them at a low cost and get a high return. And
they worth running?
Yeah, it's the stone circles argument, basically, Balor, isn't it? Like Gwennen is stone circles from Ultimatum.
Yep. I don't know. I'm guilty. I just skip it.
Mm-hmm.
Gwennen or the stone circles?
Both.
I mean, I guess the real question to that is, does that necessarily matter? Because for the most part, people will just be doing all of them. You know, it's only going to be people who really care about their like efficiency per hour who are going to skip them. And by letting players see straight up which one it is, you're giving the agency to play, do you want to skip it or not? Like, would you feel more annoyed if it was a situation of like you didn't know which NPC it was, and it's like you go through the you've set it all up and it's like, okay, I've spent a minute doing whatever, and then you're like, oh, I got the shit one, that feels bad. So
okay, so here's the interesting thought on this is that I don't think this applies to both new leagues and new skills they put in every new league. I think that the new stuff that appears should always be the best thing to do. So the new skills should always be the best skills to play that league. And the league mechanic should always be the best, most fun, most profitable thing to do. I guess fun is subjective, but the most profitable, most good thing that you could be doing. I don't think we should ever have a situation where people are skipping a league mechanic at all. I don't think that should happen. And I think that those skills and league mechanic can be then toned down appropriately when they're added into the base game. But that should be the focus of that league.
I mean, they kind of did that for a while by shoving league-specific rewards into whatever league came out at that time. Like, if you think about Delirium or...
Yeah, they did that by just...
example.
They did that by just, chucking all the other league rewards in, which isn't the greatest. So I don't really have a solution. It's just been a thing that's bugging me for a while, which is I should just always want to do whatever the new thing is, and I should always feel safe playing whatever new skill comes out. But you don't right now. Like, Forbidden Right turned out good, but generally speaking, you don't. Picking new skills is not a safe league start, and it should be.
When it comes to the skills, I agree. When it comes to the league mechanic, I think it's a very dangerous argument. The reason we ended up where we are with Path of Exile, that GG now feels like they need to make a serious design philosophy shift, is Spectacle Creep. And the idea that every league should be the new most rewarding league and then they can balance it down. That's kind of where you get into the problem of people like, oh, this felt so good in this league and now it's shit. So if your philosophy is every new league must always be the most rewarding league, you will just naturally over time just end up with insane loot creep.
So not necessarily the most rewarding league. It shouldn't have to be more rewarding than last league, because last league's thing should be scaled down to the baseline of everything else.
Right, but that's not how players work. That's not how, because people just oh, this is when Ultimatum was this is just a bad ritual. I agree in theory that's how it should work, but in practice it isn't. And also, it's like with any video game, the more options you add to a game, the more you power creep a game, even if all the options are balanced just by the giving of options. So I don't know. I think what I do agree with, though, is that when a new league mechanic comes out, if a player decides they want to engage with the league mechanic, they should be flooded with the league mechanic. So stuff like making logbooks more common, making blighted maps common during blight. Like that's often been my frustration. Like Trial Master from Ultimatum is like, when you make a new league, there's a core piece of content people want to engage with, and they feel like they can't engage with it enough. Obviously, you have to account for balance. You need to tune all the rewards around that. But go on, Grim.
Go on.
I think BalorMage makes a good point. I think that Expedition was reasonably undertuned in terms of its rewards on release. I think it's getting there now. Probably a few steps away. But the thing is, you can't. They design these leagues almost in a vacuum, right? They don't know how the economy is going to work around it. They don't know how players are going to perceive it. They have no idea, right? And we don't still fully understand the league. Like, do you know how common exalts are off Tujen? I don't. Maybe the economy is like staggeringly undervaluing his currency right now. Maybe there's some guy making hundreds of exalts with ROG and selling the items. I have no idea, and they're not telling anybody. So overall, the league could be more powerful than we think, and they're obviously like they're playing like without any idea of any of the stuff that we're going to do to it, right? So I don't think that they can release a league in like such an overpowered state that it's just going to be a banger, because you'll end up with 100% delirium again, which is really bad for the game. So they have to start out slow, and then they have to basically work up to a point where it's good, in my opinion. But I think that they need to be a little bit more aggressive with making sure that the early mapping is a little bit more rewarding. Because right now, my problem is everyone's like, okay, how do I get my first items? What can I farm in white tier maps? And I can't, with good conscience right now, recommend them to go do the league mechanic. I can't, which is a problem. It should always be profitable for new players.
Wait, you don't think the league mechanic is rewarding for people in white maps?
I do not. I would not recommend that they do that, personally.
So your recommendation would be to just farm the map and go progress into higher maps before you engage with it?
That would be my recommendation currently, with the limited information I have. I haven't tested it. I don't have any data on it, and I don't know. So, and the economy could also move. So there's so many moving parts. Basically, I was just trying to make the point that it's impossible for them to balance it for release to be, 10% stronger than the last league release.
That is a fair point to make.
And you also need to keep in mind there's a very big difference between like SSF advice versus trade league advice, because like I get people often message me like, hey Tarke, like what would you do differently in trade league? And it's kind of like, I mean, you're playing a completely different video game. And yeah, so it's what works for us won't work for them and vice versa.
I'm convinced I would go very, very terribly in solo self-found.
What, with your int stacker?
SSF
int stack league start, let's go.
Easy.
I don't know. I've been saying this for a long time, and I really wish people would just try it. I genuinely think the majority of Path of Exile players would enjoy Path of Exile more if they just played one league in SSF, even if they played it and hated it, because it changes the way you think about so much of the game. Like when an item drops, you're like, what can I do with this item? Like when currency drops. And there's lots of people who already do that, but the amount of people who tell me they've never crafted, because like, why would I bother learning to craft? I can just buy it and stuff like that. It really forces you to learn the game. I genuinely think that people would have way more fun if they just played SSF. It's just, yeah. And that's even people who like go crazy on the trading, because I used to be mad into trading back in the beta, and like I was always attracted to games that I could trade in. But I tend to find with stuff like that, maybe it's a content creator thing as well, because it's like you might have a knowledge of this, Grim. It's like, okay, I found this really cool strategy. I share the really cool strategy. Everyone then tries to copy the strategy, and then it's no longer the best strategy because everyone's trying to replicate it. And then it's like constantly trying to find the next big thing, and you get into that weird like, but Grim, you told me 5 months ago in a completely different league that this is what I did to make currency. Why isn't this what to do to make currency anymore? I don't know.
I get that a lot.
Yeah. I think we were trying to refer to Hitaki's goals. My friend Tuna played SSF. Basically, SSF is a massive string of goals that you will hit one after another. In trade, the goals are very far fewer, and they all boil down to how much currency can I make, and everyone then shares the same goal, and everyone tries to do the same thing, which can be a little bit challenging. So overall, I think SSF is a more compelling gaming experience, but it's probably less exciting for most people. Would be what my point is.
Yeah, that's fair.
I tell you what, I've heard this whole thing about solo self-found a bunch, and I'm real tempted to just spend the last month in solo self-found and just be like, I need to kill endgame bosses. Shaper, Maven, Elder, Uber Elder, solo self-found kills. Because I've never done it. I've never done solo self-found. I have no idea how I would do that. I don't even know what builds to play. I don't know what to do if I can't buy stuff.
On the podcast. I think solo self-found is great because it allows you to use whatever you find for its actual purpose rather than just looking at it in terms of how much money can I get for this in the economy. And that's also at the same time why what Grim said, why it's more appealing to a lot of players to play trade, because it's easier to derive value from what they drop, what they find on the ground, if they can quantify it in the context of the economy. But
I think what I would point out here is that SSF has a lot of friction in the gameplay. So nothing you do is going to be easy, and everything you have to do, you have to think about. Like if you want to make like a chess piece, guess who's making that? That's you. And a lot of the community seems to be pushing towards a more frictionless game with like requests for auction house, for less pickup, all this stuff like that. So I would say that most players aren't probably looking to play solo self-found based on that assumption.
See, I agree, but it's disagree at the same time. I think a lot of the thing is like there's a lot of friction in Path of Exile as a game, but once you have the knowledge, there's much less. And I think the reason why a lot of people don't learn is because why learn when you can just buy it for cheaper and trade? Like that is a very big mentality. Like it's a good example of this would be the amount of people who tell me it's impossible to go into white maps with res cap without trading. Like I hear stuff like that all the time, and it's like,
I do that
but
every league.
it's impossible. Like how do you get into maps with res cap without trade? It's literally impossible, Tarke. And it's like, and I do it every league in SSF, and like all the SSF guys work it out. You know,
We do that in trade.
This
Like, I don't trade
with,
for
like,
items before
60.
maps. I'm not trading for items before maps. Just go.
I don't know.
They drop on the floor.
Hmm.
I might have 2.3k health, but I'll be res capped.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, let's just make sure we don't spend too much time on this topic and move on to one of the other ones that we need to talk about. Flask changes. How do you feel about Flask changes? Flasks overall lost a lot of power. The utility flasks and unique flasks, life flasks and mana flasks are mostly unchanged, with the exception of the enduring prefix on the mana flasks, which got toned down a little bit. But overall, utility flasks are much, much less powerful than they were before, and you also get a whole bunch fewer charges for them. How have you managed to deal with that so far? I saw Tarke has a really interesting flask setup on his character on the seismic trapper that I looked up.
People have been memeing me for my flask setup, so I run triple Quicksilver, double life pot, and my Quicksilvers are rolled with the increased effect orbs. So I've got like pre-nerfed Alchemist of Adrenaline Quicksilvers. Yeah, people find that very funny. So there's a few different things you can do. This is one thing where, especially if you're playing like Pathfinder or Scion, or you're in a trade that you can just buy the flasks, you can do some very strong, definitely going to get nerfed next league, 100% uptime, completely automated flask setups. But I will say, if you're just like, I haven't looked up a cool flask strat and you just want to like have good flasks, honestly, triple stacked increased effect Quicksilver is really good because they're always active. So basically it was something that I did on like day one where I'm like, I haven't got the flask up that much and I haven't worked out what setup I want to use. I'll just run 3 Quicksilvers because they'll always be active rather than having my usual like 4 utility flasks. And it's one of those things, you might be able to agree with this. Because I've played Path of Exile for so long, my flask is just so ingrained into my head. That was the hardest thing for me to learn to stop doing. So by stacking up flasks, that's how I broke out of that habit. And now I'm gonna like try and go back to doing flasking properly. But I've quite liked the flask changes in the sense that they've made me think about things. And I don't know, whenever Path of Exile raises new questions, I find that fun because I like answering questions.
Finding solutions to problems, yeah.
I'm still having trouble with just going clunk on all my flasks, and I'm like, I didn't need any of those. I wasted them. My anti-freeze, no.
Yeah, that's really the biggest, and that was also my biggest concern going into the flask changes. And I went into it with an open mind, and I was hoping that it was going to work out, but the flasks not giving immunity to ailments anymore during the duration, and you're not being able to pre-flask before you get an ailment. So if you're afraid that you're gonna get frozen, you have to keep the flask so you can unfreeze after you get hit, but then you want the utility part of the flask that doesn't provide the flask immune. But you want that up before you get hit. So it's like you can't perfectly flask anymore because it's like one half of the flask wants you to use
then build immunity
before, and then yeah, of course. No, absolutely. And that's what I mean. It just in the current system of Path of Exile with the ailments, I see what they're trying to do, that ailments are something more interesting to play around. But I feel with the current ailment situation on the Flask affixes, it just forces people into 100% ailment avoidance earlier and harder.
I think if you think about it the same way that you'd think about res cap, it's less of a thing. So I always try to build my characters around ailment immunity, and that's been a pretty dominant strat for quite a long time because of how easy it is to get ailment immunity. So I feel like if you just think about it like it's another problem I need to solve, then it's not that big of a deal because it's actually pretty easy to cover. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with TarkeCat here. So overall, I think that the main issue is there's like expectations of players to have blanket immunity from flasks. Those are now gone. The developers have introduced a new problem, and people, instead of looking for ways to solve it, just like, where's my immunity? Where's my immunity? It's like, okay, well, you know, if you just sit down, you take a look at the passive skill tree, and you can like look at there's clusters that give you ailment immunity. There's nodes on the tree. There's pantheons. They just introduced freeze immune on Arctic armor. Now, I'm personally of the opinion that good game design is the developers coming up with interesting problems and a number of solutions for players to solve those problems. Right now, I think that we're still lacking a few solutions for players, with especially on specific ascendancies like the Marauder. That's missing some of the ailment immunity stuff. But on Witch, I was able to get Ignite immune by taking Aberrath, which was powered up by the map thing, as well as the nodes near Witch, and now I'm completely Ignite immune. It was great. And I felt really good as a player solving that problem myself. And I also used some of the new currencies to make a poison immunity kind of flask. It triggers when I get poisoned, and it's like, yeah. But I think, you go.
So am I the only person who didn't bother to get immunities? Like, I'm using the flasks, I'm using anti-shock, anti-ignite, anti-freeze, and I'm just using them when I get frozen. Like, I'll use the flask when I get frozen. I'll use the shock.
That's physically impossible, Balor. What do you mean? This doesn't make sense.
Like,
you
I just haven't gone for immunity at all. Yeah, and I just use the flasks.
What do you mean you use the flask? This is Path of Exile. You cannot just use the flask when you need to use the flask.
This is why when I catch myself piano flasking, it's a big problem, because I've built the character around I need them to save me. And that's because I started with an Aura bot, and they had that weapon that just sucked all the ailments up. And so the first 3 days I just didn't have ailment problems. And then after that I haven't had an Aura bot since then. We split and did different things, and I've just been accepting the flask as the solution and just trying to get better at using it. It's fine.
Yeah, I think once you get over the shock of it, there's so many solutions. Like, the item he's talking about is Sign of the Sin Eater. And if you're a minion-based player, you can put that on an Animate Guardian, and it'll literally soak every ailment immunity for you. Boom, ailment immunity solved. There's so many ways to solve it. But go on, Tarke.
No, I would agree with you. I think there needs to be a couple more options, especially when you say on like certain parts of the skill tree. But yeah, it's like if you play anything which goes remotely near Ranger, there's 70% avoidance just locked within like 10 travel passives. Boom. You've then got Raider, which has got inbuilt 50%. You've got Pathfinder, which just has ailment removal whenever you use a flask. That's basically inbuilt. You've got Sab with Ignite and Shock. You've got Occultist with Freeze. You've got Chieftain with Ignite. And then, yeah, you've got insert a million different uniques which give you random coverage. You can use Pantheons. Like I've seen a lot of, but we don't have the answers. Like, well, no, you really do. You can use small cluster jewels. There's like so much stuff you can do.
There's a ton of influenced mods we've never valued before.
Yes.
Remove Ignite on Flask use, remove immunity to shock while Flasks are active. Like, there's so many that have just had zero value before now. There's a ton of them. There's immunity to everything can actually be on your gear as part of influence rolls that people just aren't using yet.
Yeah, I think the main problem where the ailments feel really bad is at the start of the game, like when you're going through Act 1 and you get frozen. Well, it's like, well, damn, dude. Well, what am I meant to do there? I literally have no solutions here. I just got frozen. I got auto-killed. And it just feels unfair. And it is unfair. So they need to add some sort of early game solution, specifically in Act 1 to freeze.
No, I agree with that.
Also, when it was 1 second, it was trash, right?
Yeah.
But 4 seconds has made it just fine now, but 1 second was trash. That was trash. But yeah.
I was going to say just quickly, just as an anecdote on the whole early game thing. So yeah, in the PoE 2 demo, one of the first bosses you encounter in like the second, literally like the second or third zone, puts a disgusting bleed on you, and then covers the floor in. He does this thing where like he shoots out like a giant nova of projectiles. It's like, okay, so I need to run from the projectiles, but I'm bleeding, and I'm like level 3.
Yeah.
So
That's
the
just
answer is
unfair.
you just need to never get hit the first time. If you get hit once, you're just dead. But yeah, no, the early game thing is definitely when you do notice it.
Yep. If we're still on the topic of flasks, I will introduce a problem which I think is there, and that is the unique flasks were often what enabled a lot of the really powerful second builds. Like, you know how you play on your league start, you amass all this currency, and then you like roll it into like a really powerful build, and you're basically a god, and you run around for weeks farming up all the different crazy content, min-maxing your character, all sorts of stuff like that. With the removal of unique flasks, like they gutted a lot of the flasks. Maybe there's stuff you can still do with them, with like the chalice, the extends the duration, all sorts of stuff like that. But for the most part, a lot of the power has been stripped away out of those, and you definitely notice it more in the very top end of the game on those second characters than you do on your league starters like trappers, miners, necros, and all sorts of stuff like that. So I think once people start hitting that, they're going to get another wave of, oh, this feels bad, and it does feel bad.
Forbidden Taste is broken.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can use the orb, which is whenever you use a savage hit, automatically uses the flask. So it kind of gives you like pseudo one-shot protection, because if you go to 0 and get healed in the same instance, you don't die. So yeah, that's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, slightly okay.
Efficiently
actual one-shot protection. It's cheat death.
Yeah.
If it's a perfect roll, it effectively doubles your HP. Is basically what you're saying, which I think a lot of people don't know. But Tanky made a video on that.
Taste of Hate is still. I was really surprised they didn't nerf Taste of Hate more, because Taste of Hate is arguably like the strongest flask, because it's very strong offensive and defensive.
I would say Cinder Swallow was the best flask in the game.
Cinder Swallow is very good. Yeah. But Taste of Hate is dirty, because it's like even if you aren't getting any damage from it, defensively is such a strong flask.
You remember Volpact back in the day?
Yeah, I remember Volpact.
Cinder Swallow was like basically Volpact, but way better, because it restored all of it. But yeah, I agree that Taste of Hate is very good, and I actually still do see people using Taste of Hate right now, actually, with the nerfs.
Zeri's promise is painful now. Like I was never like, because my SSF I have to farm a lot of Zeri to get my Zeri step beats, and I used to get annoyed before when the promise would drop, now when a promise drops, I'm like, go away. This is awful.
Yeah. But we did get some new flasks, actually. I haven't really taken a look at it, and I'm pretty sure that most of the community hasn't. But there's one that just gives you adrenaline. Just gives you adrenaline straight up.
Yep.
Which one's that again? What's it called?
I don't actually remember exactly. There's one that gives exposure to anything around you when you pop it, and there's one that gives adrenaline. I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but adrenaline's a pretty good ability.
Adrenaline's pretty good, yeah. I haven't had that one drop for me yet. I've had the Ward Flask, which is pretty. I think Ward in general is pretty slapped on. I'm just waiting to collect all the pieces for it in SSF so I can kind of make a second build around Ward. But yeah, like there's a lot of fun to be had with the new stuff. And I definitely think a lot of the frustrations that people are having is just kind of not adapting yet from a headspace point of view. And that was also, so I was pretty frustrated actually. I made a video like, this annoys me, when GGG did the big ailment changes and everything so early on. I generally get very irritated with GGG, full stop. But they do lots of things kind of like, okay, we've introduced this crazy new system. They've obviously collected a lot of internal feedback from people testing it in team. And I sometimes feel like kind of what happens is like they already know what they're going to do. Like they've collected all the feedback, but they're going to ship it live anyway just to see like if the player sentiment aligns with it. And I think that might be sometimes we get such rapid iteration. But I do sometimes wish that they would just say, play the system, learn to adapt, and then we'll think about it. Because I think a lot of the time they just kind of instantly cater, and that's where you get problems where it's like, it was actually fine before, but people just didn't adapt. I don't know.
Yeah, outside of bug fixes or like really like game breaking stuff, I don't think they should make any balance adjustments in the first 2 weeks. But that's just me from a personal point of view, because I want everyone, regardless of how much they play or when they start their league, I want everyone to have the same experience, more or less. Like, I mean, of course, there's economic differences and stuff if you play in trade, but I want everyone to experience the same state of the game when they play the league the first time, and then after everyone is on the same page about the changes and what needs to be adjusted, then they can make adjustments. But I also see that obviously if they don't make quick adjustments, they may lose a large portion of their players early on, and a lot of people who leave the league don't come back. That's what I'm trying to say. A lot of the casual players are like, okay, I'm done skipping the league.
Yep.
See you in 3 months.
You could also make that argument though that if they've already left and they're not coming back, well then they're not coming back, so the change isn't going to necessarily, gonna.
Well, I mean, the idea is that they implement the change before the people say, I'm not coming back, I'm leaving.
How do you guys? It's a slight shift, but how do you feel about the balance changes they've done in terms of buffing skill gems? I really don't know how I feel about that. I really dislike it. I understand why they're doing it, and I agree with what Balor said earlier about like when a skill gem comes out, it should not be shit. But like they've done so many changes to skill gems. I would be incredibly annoyed if I was a trade league player who league started on like one of the new skills, got to a certain point and said, nah, this is shit, sold all my gear, re-rolled onto a new build, and then the next day they buffed my skill. I'd be fuming.
Oh, that goes to support gems too, right? Like you've built your entire character around this new mana cost, and you've successfully overcome this big mana cost problem, and then they're like, jokes, mana's fine now. You're like, oh, so I've got all this investment in nothing. Like,
Yep. I think, look, the skills should never have been released how they have been released. They've clearly not been played. Like, for a skill to actually have been tested, I would expect one of the developers or a playtester to pretty much play through the early game, play through, like yellow and red maps, and then try and actually beat the invitations or the endgame bosses on a build, which is, obviously got the pieces edited in and stuff like that. But I don't actually even know. Can you actually beat any of the endgame bosses with Reaper? Can you actually do it?
I doubt it.
I'm not convinced. I don't actually think you can. It would be incredibly difficult even if you could. So I think that the skills are suffering from not enough time. In my opinion, if you had asked that poor dev team, hey, okay, guys, we want a big skill patch here. Come up with 19 new skill gems. Oh, by the way, they need to all be balanced and tested. It's not going to happen. They don't have enough time. It's just not possible. So I kind of had a feeling this would happen, and they should have just hedged their bets and really cranked them up and overtuned them. And then, maybe nerf the next patch. That was their only solution, I think. But they decided to just, go with a conservative approach, which I think they're getting punished for now.
Yeah, no. When I saw 19 skill gems, I was like, uh-oh. And that's why I'm so worried about the whole 19 new ascendancies coming in PvT. Like,
they got a lot of time for that, though.
Yeah, but like they've got to make all of PoE2 first. Like, there's a lot to do there. But yeah, 19 skill gems was kind of insane. I think they would have been much better off if they kind of just if that was their goal, they did that over a couple of leagues, But yeah, 19 all at once. Because we have had a few skills come out of it which have been good. Like, we've got Forbidden Right, we've got Spectral Helix. As like the big two like showstoppers, I would say. And
I have Winter is also good. People don't rate it, but I've already people start picking it up. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the Akane Miner. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I watched his video with the update. With
he's using it. It looks pretty cool.
So like, it's not all doom and gloom, but like the fact that the Absolution buff made me laugh because they like buffed it by like 400% more damage.
Yeah.
It's like 249% more damage at level 1 up to 400 or something. I read that and I was just like, that's an interesting change you've gone for there. This is very Diablo 3.
The most interesting part is it didn't get the one-line buff it actually needed.
The chance to proc on uniques and rares. Yeah, so we're...
All the other skills that work like that are if you kill or if you hit are unique or rare. And this one is just if you hit a unique, that's it. There's no or rare in there. So it just still doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, if you try and actually think about it, you're like, okay, so what is it like in GG's office right now? They got the PlayStation launch, which is on fire. They got the League, which is on fire. They got all these skill gems on fire. They got bug fixes, which are on fire. They've still actually got to make the new League, and they're making PoE 2. And also, there's Royale to look about, and Twitch Rivals.
Okay. PoE Mobile.
Oh, and PoE Mobile. There's a few things going on here. I don't know how they're actually able to do any of it. So,
And the mobiles are literally on fire because they got very hot. Like, those phones were very toasty.
They also had the console launch a couple days ago, and that got delayed. There was some problems with deploying the console League launch. So yeah, all in all, definitely
it's a stressful time for them.
But I do like that they're so ambitious. I mean, on the one hand, I think maybe not that much, but on the other hand, I do appreciate them for all they try to do there. And I can't blame them for the adjustments either. I like that there's people around who think about things and who are willing to make adjustments. I just wish they didn't make adjustments in the first 2 weeks.
I actually don't agree. I think they need to make more adjustments, but that's just my opinion. I think from a product perspective and from optics and all sorts of stuff like that, if they let the game sit and fester in an unplayable state, in the opinion of most of the community, it's just not going to work. It's not going to be viable as a league for them financially, or or whatever. They need to make sure that it is hitting right for the most amount of people as fast as possible.
Yeah,
it's like imagine like you have like you're a doctor and your patient is like struggling to breathe, and you're like, let's wait 2 weeks for the diagnosis to make sure we get the right diagnosis. And then in 2 weeks, they're dead. Oh, shit.
I mean, you literally described most healthcare systems. Like, well, that's how doctors literally work.
True. Whoops, my bad.
Not everyone's in Australia with good healthcare.
It's, I don't know. It's one of those things where they're in a bit of an awkward situation. And I kind of just hope they stick to their guns. So, they're making changes which aren't very popular for a large portion of the player base, and popular with the portion that are looking forward to them. I happen to be the portion who are looking forward to this like new approach they're taking. And they've said like, we realize that we're going to lose players over this, and we're committed to this vision, and we've accepted that. I don't necessarily know how true that is, because I don't know how confident they're going to be in that decision after like 2 or 3 leagues of hemorrhaging. Because that's going to happen. And I just kind of hope that if this is what they're going for, they stick to it. And they're like, nope, this is what we're doing. Yes, we might lose a third of our player base, but this is what we're doing. We're sticking to it. I'd much rather they do that than they had like a couple of leagues of freaking out half the player base and then reverting, going the other way. And then... Because basically what they've kind of said is like, look, we're not happy with the game we're making. This is the game we want to make. This will make us happy. And a bunch of people have said, we don't want that. Screw you. So I would rather that they are happy, they make the game they want to make, and it's a niche product and they lose like half their player base, but they're like, cool. Then after 2 leagues, they go, actually, we've lost a bunch of money. We're going to go back to being unhappy with the game we're making, but you guys are happy. Well, some of you, because some of you wanted the other game, and yeah.
I do think they need to slow it down a little bit if they're going to keep going in this direction. Because, like, while I love this direction personally, this was a very, very large shift, this league.
Next league's going to be even bigger, dude. Like, this is the thing. It's like, people talk about it as if, like, oh, this league's been rough. This league has been rough, but, like, I'm expecting it to get rougher and rougher with each league. Like, we have a long way to go to what the PoE 2 was that I played in New Zealand. Like, there's a lot of change that has to happen.
You can't do it. Like, at memes aside, they'll kill the game if they do that.
Yeah.
They'll actually kill the game. This is the best analogy I can think of. So basically, if you take Ritual League, everyone's rocking up. They get a full bowl of soup. Oh man, this soup tastes great. Next league, Ultimatum, they rock up half a bowl of soup this time. Where's my soup, man? That sucks. Rock up this league, a quarter of a bowl of soup, man. And next league, you're telling me there's gonna be no soup? I'm not coming, man. I'm not gonna come to the restaurant. They can't do it. So they should. I'm assuming, and I hope this was the scorched earth approach. I'm hoping this is the baseline where they want maps and all that power to be. Because if it's not, they're in a little bit of trouble, and they need to really come up with a good idea. And I think overall, the problem stems from the fact they're essentially asking players to come back and try and work towards their goals they had before, but with less tools and power available to them, and they're not going to be able to even get close. And like, no one wants. That just creates a massive amount of apathy. They're not going to be able to get to where they were before, let alone where they wanted to get to in the next like point of like goal. So yeah.
I agree to an extent. I think because this is the thing as well, is like, I think it's very extreme the way that people kind of talk about this. If you were to take the game right now and reduce the speeds by probably about like 40-50% at the top end, that's kind of where I imagine they want to be at. And that's like scary for a lot of people. Like, that's very scary for a lot of people, because a lot of people want that, like, Ferrari all the time, 24/7. But it's one of those things where I feel like there is a middle ground to be had, and I feel like there's a middle ground for a lot of players, and I think there's a lot of people who will like the destination but will hate the journey. And I kind of feel like the way that people kind of talk about it is kind of like, if they make any change, this game is dead. And it's like, because there's not really, like, where are people realistically going to go? Like, let's say that GGG goes full scorched earth, league after league, massive, like, screw you, cut massive power spikes. There's Last Epoch, which is a much slower game than Path of Exile. So it's not like you're going to go to Last Epoch for super zoom meta. There's Grim Dawn, which isn't really being updated. Diablo 3, and you've got Diablo 4 that will come out in like 4 or 5 years if Blizzard hasn't burned itself to the ground. Like, where are these players going to go?
I mean, that statement is, in my opinion, a bit hyperbolic, because people don't just play ARPGs, right? An ARPG player can play multiple different games.
You can play multiple other things. I mostly play other games outside of the genre, but like, in terms of the ARPGs, they've kind of got a pretty safe thing. They haven't really got someone chasing for them. It's not like, for example, like a COD versus Battlefield situation. There's currently not really anyone who can just be like, and we're going to yoink your player base.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but okay. So this brings up a different discussion. I don't know, Kat, if you want me to go into another tangent. Do we got time?
We covered a lot of ground, and we have still almost 40 minutes left. Please go.
All right. So essentially, TarkeCat's pitching that we can reduce the game speed by 50%. So there's a few different ways that you could do this. It could be through combat, or it could be through player movement speed. So if you do it through player movement speed, you're basically not solving anything, because there's skills which is fundamentally better than other skills. So take Tornado Shot. Big surprise I'd pick that one. That skill hits the entire screen and can, with enough investment, one-shot the entire screen. If you take a skill like, the new Bone Smash Quinn skill, I don't know what it's called. That skill is going to basically take like 5 or 6 times as long to clear the same amount of packs. So unless they fundamentally alter some of the most powerful skills in the game, like Tornado Shot, EK Nova, any of those ones, the game is just never going to work. And then you also have to take into account the difference between melee and ranged, and you're never going to achieve like what you're looking for unless you drastically change the game and remove a ton of skills, which a lot of players find fun. And if I read on the patch notes, Tornado Shot has been removed, I would not be happy.
I agree. I don't think they're going to go that way, though. I would say a good example point would be how they changed the meta from like Harby to post Harby. Because if you remember around Harby, the meta for like every single spellcaster was Brightbeak. Because you didn't need anything better than a Brightbeak to do all the content. And you just shield charge and everything was just 100% zoom. And then they just did a couple of leagues of, nope, you actually need to make your characters strong through the content. And we've seen this recently with like boss content matters. People have been making the characters more around bossing. Like, they just need to keep doing things like that. You can still have a situation where, like, for your second build of the league or your third build of the league, you're going to go, this is my Tornado Shot time now. And they're fine with that. I mean, I don't know, I'm not on their design team, but like, when people talk about like slowing the game down, it doesn't mean that you can never make a fast character. It just means that in theory, your first character of the league by day 3 shouldn't be globaling everything. You can still get to that with the investment. Like, the fact that, for example, Grim, how much of the content had you done by day 2?
I'd done like Shaper and all that stuff like that, yeah.
Right.
But I think it's a fair assessment, obviously, but continue.
But like, it's one of those things where even if they were to nerf next league, if they just cut like the damage of all builds by 50% again, you'd still be reaching that goal. Like, it might be day 3 now. Like, there's so much power, just inherent overflowing power in Path of Exile right now. You could trim a lot of fat, and people would still be face rolling content.
I actually don't think you're right. I think you're actually wrong. Having actually seen people play the builds, the second builds, so I witnessed my friend play Elemental Hit with like a 40x bow, like a pretty GG bow. Yeah. And he was not face rolling red tier maps. He wasn't face rolling T16s. The damage penalty was big, and that's what I was talking about with the flasks. So we're at that point right now where you're not just zoom, zoom, zoom. I'm smashing everything, haha. Maybe with mirror tier gear, but how many people are going to get that, right? So a lot of people are cut off from that. I'm a god. I'm going to go through maps playstyle now, which is not great.
I don't know. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where the community is at 2 leagues from now, assuming they stick with this path. But I'm expecting... I'm probably, like, if I had to predict, like, what I think they're going to be doing next, like, for next league, I'd probably expect more nerfs in terms of player power. I would probably expect loot to get hit pretty heavily. And they
hit it this patch, they did hit it this patch.
Yeah, but like I think, and again I don't know, but I think the way they're gonna try and solve loot, from the way they talk about like splinters and stuff, is like, okay, so like you run a delirium map, you run a breach, it's like, oh, I've got splinters everywhere. It's like, okay, we could get all the splinters drop in a stack, or the splinters don't drop. I feel like that's probably going to be a way they're going to try and solve a lot of the loot bloat, is just reducing loot by like 40%. Like, honestly, I think that might be the way they go. I don't think that's necessarily the right way to go, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Can't do that. You can't reduce speed and player power and loot at the same time. That's the double tap. It's like the more multipliers basically on like less loot.
But they know that. They must have such a high confidence in their vision and what they're doing right now, because they've said that multiple times. I mean, Chris always brings up the example of Marvel Heroes nerfing the mobility of the champions and losing the majority of their player base virtually overnight. And he's always emphasized how careful they are with Path of Exile to not replicate that mistake. And then to see such a drastic change in how the game is being played and how players have power available at the disposal, they, yeah, like I said, they must have a lot of confidence in it. And please, Beller.
I've said a few times, I think this will improve player retention, not drop it. This league, we have a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah.
But I think most of those people who are angry will just stop being angry and come back when they realize this is what's happening now, and your whining didn't do anything, and they're going to come back and they're going to play for longer. I think this just makes the game better and will increase retention in long term.
Well, certainly for new players, like there are a number of people who gotten used to getting more and more power every patch, and I would say like
looks
some
like
of those
Grim
people
doesn't agree.
Grim really doesn't agree.
I don't know. I'm fairly positive, but I'm obviously speaking fairly like frankly here. I think that they went about it in a way I wouldn't have done it. So let me give you a different announcement. Instead of we're nerfing everything, instead of that, let's say we're introducing T17 to T19 maps. These are significantly harder than all other content in the game. And we're also introducing a new currency which allows you to empower all endgame bosses in the game. Right? Let's say they did it that way. Suddenly, all of our builds are weaker comparatively to the new end game, and there's new content in the game as well. Now, obviously, I understand why you don't do that because that's a ton more content to create and maintain. But if you think about the optics of that, what's the problem?
The problem is that's the World of Warcraft approach, because you then make all the previous content no longer interesting content. When you design your game like that, you knock everything out. Whereas what GGG is trying to do is they're trying to keep all the old content relevant. So as soon as you go that way, you suddenly just like knock out all your previous design. They're trying to keep all of their old design as valuable for as long as possible. And that is just straight up the World of Warcraft approach. And it works for like a year, but then 10 years from now, it's like, most of our game is meaningless.
You're right. I know. I just know that it would have been much better received.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. It's true. You're right.
Like I completely get it. I completely get it. And I've had that thought process a lot before, and I was like, why don't they do it that way? And it's like, well, because you just like kill half their game. And this isn't the first time we've gone through this with Path of Exile. It's like, do you remember the backlash around increasing monster life after Metamorph?
Oh yeah,
that was
Conquerors. Yeah,
that was like a big thing. But now it's like, because this thing is like every league we're still going to get power creep, because that's the other thing as well. Like, you can nerf player power, but with our builds are still going to be getting more new powerful tools every league, because it's just that's how they design stuff. And, you know, even with like the Flask, massive Flask reworks, which is a lot of nerfs. There's a lot of really powerful stuff that's come out of it. Like you can have fully automated uptime Pathfinder setups or Scion Pathfinder setups. Like there's a lot of broken stuff that's come from the Flasks, and we're just going to keep seeing this because we're still going to get like new influence items and whatever. It does frustrate me a little bit that one of the things that GGG does, and I think this is the most valid criticism of GGG, is GGG saying, we want to slow the game down. Here's tier 0. And by the way, every league mechanic has a timer. And it's like, I'm hoping what they do next league is they will continue with the nerfs, but they will also then address the problems they've made in the way their end game is designed. Because at some point, they're going to have to even out the grind. Because if you just keep saying to players, yeah, your progression is 50% slower, your progression is 50% slower, your progression is 50% slower, and your progression is the same amount of like steps, you need to run the same hundreds of thousands of maps every league, then people will leave. But if they can reduce that a little bit and then do other stuff.
So a thought also is that this is not the most upset the PoE community has ever been. Even it's not even close to the most upset I've ever seen the PoE community. This is when we changed Energy Shield and got rid of Val Pact on Energy Shield a while back. The world was ending. As far as people were concerned, there was no way anyone would ever be able to kill anything again. No one was going to be able to map. The idea of killing a boss was out the window. Only there would be like 6 people in the entire server who would kill a boss now because it was impossible. Like the world was ending.
The original cast on crit nerfs as well.
And it was fine. Everything was that league that it hit fucking half player numbers. And then everyone just came back and it was fine. And we've seen that happen 3 or 4 times in really big numbers. And this is not the most upset people have been. This is why I'm saying they will just get over it and come back. Like, that's what's going to happen. Because it's happened before.
Yeah, there was the double dip change. There was the big AoE rework. The AoE rework was a big one for people.
Oh, yeah, that was awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this has happened before. We've seen it a bunch of times. I think it'll just be an exact repeat of the same thing. People are upset. They'll piss off for a league. Everyone comes back. That's just.
I think it's a little bit different, but yeah. I think the game plays pretty similarly, yeah. And I think that people will overcome the challenges, and we'll see new builds come out. I'm a little bit disappointed in the league start stats, but I think we all expected it. You know, comfort picks. What is it? TR, Necro, yeah, Sab, and then that's like pretty much it, right? Oh, and Hyro. That's it.
And 3 int stacking wonders.
Oh, true. My bad.
I'm not the only person I roped into that league start, by the way.
Oh God.
I'm so sorry to everyone else who followed it.
Content creators baiting their viewers into playing shit builds.
I said, don't do what I'm doing, do what I tell you to do. And some people were like, I reckon I'm good enough. I can do what he's doing. Mate, I couldn't do what I was doing. Don't do what I do.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, I mean, that might be biased. I went over a lot of the replies, the angry comments on the patch notes and the dev manifesto, and made a meme out of it with chat, you know, putting like a lot of the things in my text-to-speech browser plugin and just having it read out. And but judging from that, obviously that's a very small subsection, but I think there is a large, not a majority, but a large portion of people who quit over changes like this, not because of the changes specifically, but they were just waiting for a point where they were going to quit the game anyway because of fatigue or because of other underlying frustrations.
Maybe
that's a rough take. I think I finished the thought.
I don't necessarily think that's fair. So again, I'm fully in favor of the new direction they're taking. I'm hoping they stick to the new direction. But I think it's quite disingenuous to completely dismiss the people who are frustrated, because again, it's one of those things of, if Harvest was your favorite state of Path of Exile, and then you lost Harvest, and you've just seen like the last 3 or 4 leagues, like what was your perfect game just get worse in your opinion, I can completely understand why you'd be frustrated. I completely understand the outrage. And as I said earlier, you don't have an option. You haven't got something else that you can go to. I can completely understand why some people are as angry as they are, and it's very unfortunate that people are having to go through that. To me, it's like Path of Exile is Path of Exile. I'm playing it now. It still feels like Path of Exile. They would have to do a lot. Like, they would have to do something really dumb for me to log in and be like, this doesn't feel like PoE anymore. So, but I think to the extent some players are angry is a bit much, but I think players have a justifiable reason to be angry, because, you know, it's like you're watching your favorite game potentially go in a direction that's no longer right for you, and that is horrible. You know, I've had that with games before. It's a big reason why I don't play World of Warcraft anymore. It's because it's just like, WoW went the wrong way. And that's one thing I have found a little bit funny, is I've seen a lot of people comparing this situation to the WoW situation, but I would argue it's the complete opposite, because what happened with World of Warcraft is they no longer catered to their original audience, and they went like super casual, and then they tried to like ride this weird middle ground of catering to like mythic hardcore raiders, but then everything else is super casual and grindy. Whereas what GGG is doing is kind of the opposite, where like they kind of lost a lot of their original people. They've went more casual, and now they're trying to go back to the hardcore. And when I say hardcore, I don't mean like hardcore versus software. I mean hardcore and like the OG kind of players. And people are like, this is what happened with World of Warcraft. It's like, no, it's the complete opposite of what happened with World of Warcraft. But yeah.
No, I totally agree. I didn't want to dismiss the serious criticism, and like I said,
Grim.
that was mostly
Grim
based
is
on
ready
the
to stab
comments.
me in the face. He's like, fuck.
But no, what I wanted to say quickly is like the TarkeCat Killer and Exile, also two very, very known and successful speedrunners of Path of Exile, are significantly less enthusiastic about speedrunning the game than they were before. Where I was expecting people to be hyped about the new patch, regardless of the speed getting taken down. It's just interesting when there's so many changes, balance changes to the game, how flasks work, how this works and that works. I was expecting people to be more hyped about setting new records in 3.15.
Okay, so with the Tai scenario, I know him pretty well. I'm not going to speak as if I know what his opinion is or anything like that, but my assessment of what would be going on there is, so basically, imagine you're setting new times every single league, right? And you're like getting faster and faster and faster. And then someone comes in and says, all right, you're going to be 30% slower, have these leg weights on, and you can't run as fast anymore. Well, that's not very much fun, is it? You're basically just chasing what you already had over and over again. So I completely understand why he'd be pretty unhappy with the state of the game. And I think that's actually a pretty good reflection of what's going on in the general community overall as well. So if you were chasing Cyrus 8 and now you can't get there as much, it's like, oh, well, shit, dude, that sucks. So yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable for him to not want to play as much anymore.
I've had that sentiment expressed to me also in Twitter comments, but I just feel that there needs to be a mindset shift in some way. I know what you mean, that last league you almost got to this or that boss, you were looking forward to killing it this league, but then you can't because everything got toned down so much. But are you really a worse player because the game got harder or the rules changed? I don't know. If you go from say weightlifting into a higher class and all of a sudden you need to work harder to achieve the same success relative, then you've still grown.
It's purely a mindset thing. Like it depends on individuals how you think about certain situations. Because you could take two different speed runners and you could be like, you have achieved the best time you will ever achieve. You'll never get that again, and that will kill a lot of their motivation. And you could take the same person; they would see that as a challenge. It's entirely a mindset thing. Not one is right or wrong. It'd be the equivalent, especially when it comes to people whose main enjoyment is speedrunning Act 1. Of going back and patching Ocarina of Time, and they're like, "Whoa, what? You've destroyed all of our records." Now, obviously, I feel like someone like Tai would feel quite different if it was a situation of you've had this thing, and here's the PoE 2 campaign, because then it's okay, completely fresh, let's go. But until you've got that completely new campaign, I could completely understand the mindset of well, I'm not that interested in playing, because I haven't spoken to Tai loads, but he said before he enjoyed the axe. That's the thing that he has the most fun with. So it's just you've effectively just nerfed his enjoyment. He might have felt differently if it was a situation of they reworked all of the axe alongside these nerfs, but it's no, it's just Act 1. So it's I can completely understand someone like that losing motivation. And not that certain outrage is justified or not justified, but if any kind of player was justified to lose interest, I would say it's someone like that. I think he has a very good reason to kind of be a bit
Interestingly enough, I feel like that way of describing it is also exactly what happened to me last league when they removed 100% delirious maps.
I remember you talking about this. Yeah, you felt you lost your end game.
Building up to. That was what I was nearly getting good enough to do at league start, day 4, day 5, getting into 100% delirious was my goal for ages. And I was nearly there, and then it disappeared. And last league, I spent 7 or 8 weeks not playing PoE.
Well, but for
I just didn't play PoE for the last 7 weeks of a league. It's the longest break I've ever taken. I lost 2/3 of my income from Twitch because I wasn't on my game. I just couldn't bring myself to come back and play it because I had lost interest.
But for you, the goalpost wasn't shifted. For you, the goalpost was completely gone. You didn't have that goal to aspire to anymore. Whereas for someone speedrunning, I just like to think of it, if the game dies, it's not reborn every patch.
The same. But it's still a very similar feeling. I could see that being quite a similar feeling.
Yeah, I have 2 points. So in my in the very kind of in the circle of my friends, right? My circle of friends. The actual most common complaint of PoE, it's not about nerfs, it's not about anything. It's that there's no end game, right? which is ridiculous to the most amount of people. They're like, "Are you kidding me? I can't even get through Atlas." But for my friends, like that's what it is. Like there's no 100% dilly anymore. There's no delve anymore. Boo hoo. And we want a new end game. Obviously, we probably won't get that because everyone's still struggling to get through Atlas every league. But I think overall, GGG doesn't seem to worry too much about like the little stories of players like Balor, like Tai. They just come through with their design sledgehammer. Boom! We're gonna make this game how we want. And it is actually probably correct. 100% Delirium needed to go. It was just awful. Same with Harvest. It needed to go. There were awful design decisions, and they invalidated a lot of the content in the game, and they also limited future design space. But by getting rid of them, you damage a lot of what the players feel is like useful and valuable in the game for themselves. So yeah, I think that they're being pretty I guess reckless, but maybe it works out in the end, and hopefully we all get through this okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Maybe if there's a couple of lesser known speedrunners now setting act world records, maybe that gives a bigger incentive for the old top dogs to come back and to beat those. I just feel like it's a new balanced state of the game. It's like a new game. It only looks like the old game, and there's still a lot of records to be set in this current environment. I don't know. I'm just surprised that, I guess, like from my mindset, obviously as someone who's not very successful at speedrunning, it just seems like it's a wipe, right? Like it's a new level playing field for everyone to go in and to successfully speedrun or to successfully get into the game, because it's a new balance state. Cards have been shuffled.
Well, I think it's safe to say you've got your next guest locked in. You can get him on, get him to talk for himself rather than us psychoanalyzing the poor lad.
Well,
but yeah,
maybe we can arrange that. True. Let's not theorize a lot about that. I was just using Tai as like
no, it was a good example. I completely understand it.
Yeah.
Where do we move from here?
Was there anything in terms of the lead mechanic that you want us to talk about, before we kind of just went like crazy design space point of view, just kind of where we've just sort of been floating around?
I think we talked about pretty much everything about the league mechanic. One aspect that I saw people talk about was the immunities. And then whenever that comes up, people say that immunities didn't really need to be added to the game. You don't need immune fizz, you don't need immune chaos. It would have been like a significant reduction of damage, but the punishment is perceived too strong by some people. What do you think, Grim?
I don't like that it's binary. Like you either you can or you can't. I don't like that. But at the same time, I understand why they put it in there. Like that poor designer is sitting there going, "Oh, what am I gonna do to stop these guys from just spamming all the remnants, dude? What can I possibly add there? Oh, okay, screw these guys. Immunities, Carl. Yeah, bitch. How do you like that one?" And I understand why they did it, but at the same time, obviously, as a player, it doesn't feel too great. But I will say it does make me read them, and it does make me check that little icon of what modifiers I have on my expedition at the end. I always look at that now, and if I accidentally hit one, which is immunity to cold, which is for me, I can't do that. I have to undo my thing and plan out a new one. So,
yeah, I'd completely agree with that.
We didn't know the cull ones existed to begin with because they don't show up in a different color. And I had a low life aura bot. It's just like, I'm immune to everything. I'm immune to everything. Oh, I'm dead. What happened? We died like 4 or 5 times before we even realized there was a cull one.
I was wondering, does that one specifically work like the player cull? Like, as in, if the monster brings you to below 20%, you die? Because it specifically says if they hit you when you're at 20%.
Yeah, if you're below 20%, you die. No. So low life builds just go, the tiniest little breath, you're dead.
Yeah. I've been doing a good job avoiding those in hardcore, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll just echo that. I think it's very lazy design. It serves its purpose, so I guess I can't fault it on that sense. But it is so unbelievably boring, because you just ignore it. I don't know. I've accidentally once put Fizz in, and Fizz is the one that I can't do. And I'm like, whoops, that was a mistake. And then I just skipped it. And I was like,
No swapping in a Fizz to Lightning gem?
No. My pure Fizz build wouldn't be very good if I was shoving Fizz to Lightning. No. Yeah.
Yep.
It's not interesting. With the way they've designed it, it's not even like one of those things. I'm not like, oh, for my next character, I'm going to make a Trinity multi-elemental build to buy, because it's so easy to completely and utterly ignore. Like, it is so unbelievably easy to never have to engage with the mechanic. I have zero reason to build around it. So, yeah.
I think that a lot of those things, those decisions, honestly, are probably just due to time restraints. Like, I actually mapped out all of the rewards associated with all the different locations on logbooks, for example. And believe it or not, 5 of the locations all have enchanted items and Legion Splinters as their rewards. And none of the others, that's like so overrepresented. Why did they make it so 5 of them have enchanted items? No one wants enchanted items. Why is that there? I don't know. That's just such a weird decision overall. Again, yeah, it's weird.
I still have to do more logbooks. I've only done like 5 or 6 logbooks total.
They're quite fun.
Yeah, they're really fun. I really enjoy them. Just as like a fun sort of thought experiment to sort of end on, one thing I often think which would be very interesting is how different do you think this league mechanic would look if Path of Exile wasn't a live service game, but it was an expansion game? Like, how would Expedition look differently if Expedition was the yearly Path of Exile update?
Does that like mean it gets more dev time or something like that?
So what I mean by that is a lot of
it's an expansion that you buy, or what do you mean?
Okay, so most design in Path of Exile is kneecapped by the fact that every 3 months they make a new league. So ideas are very rarely ever fully fleshed out. So if Path of Exile was like Grim Dawn or like Diablo, where it's like, this is Path of Exile, the yearly update, the only new content we got this year was Expedition, how different do you think it would be if they spent a year working on this rather than like half of 3 months while working on PvT, while developing the next league, while fixing all the old fires and all the other bullshit?
Well, obviously, I think it would be pretty incredible, obviously, right? It would have to be to make up for 4 leagues and an endgame expansion in the end. So it would obviously have to be...
Again, I don't think you guys are getting it, so it's fine. We don't have to get there. I feel like you're kind of... I'm not saying they should shift their entire design thing. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you're saying it was rushed, is if they had a year working on this and they fully realized it, what do you think they would have done differently?
Oh, I think the rewards would have been tuned perfectly. I think that they would have introduced additional challenge in the end game, like for multiple characters. I think that the rewards would have been more generous on the early side of things. I think each of the vendors probably would have had a lot more, story, and they would be like a lot more fleshed out. Perhaps small things like the art issues would be worked out as well, like you mentioned, Tarke. But overall, yeah, I think that there's probably just a lot of things where it's like, let's say that they got like 3 drafts of those currency arts, right? And the creative director was like, okay, well, I got to pick out of these 3. We don't have time to go for another draft. Let's just go with that one. That's the best I've got. Next task. Yeah, I think that's probably what a lot of it looks like. Just from the way I picture their offices working. I haven't been there. I don't know. You've been there, Tarke. Maybe you can speak to that.
I mean, to be honest, I would feel a bit uncomfortable working in that sort of space, because it's the way that it's very open plan, looking over everyone's shoulders, and it can be very good because you can just be like instantly getting people. But I do sometimes worry if that sort of super open space kind of limits design a bit, because you're kind of just like constantly able to be interrupted and whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't get to fully elaborate on your idea and on your vision before people give feedback on it.
Not necessarily. It's kind of like, I don't. Okay, this is completely. This is how I sometimes feel like stuff is made over there. This is just entirely this isn't me inside information or anything. Is okay. We've got 4 different teams. We've separated into things. You need to do this. 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 Team 1 then goes to show their little like whatever to Chris or Jonathan or Neon or whoever's the top dog, and like, this is what we've done. And they've said, okay, change this. Team A goes back to do that. Team B hasn't been told what Team A has been done to change. Team B comes in and said, we worked on this bit. Yeah, okay, this is good, but we've told A to change this, so you're going to have to do that. Okay, cool. team C's like, okay, so we've got this. Yeah, no, A and B is different. What you've done, actually, we'll save that for a different thing. You're working on this now. And then team D's like, hey, yeah, mate, so you're gonna have to completely scrap that because this and this is different. And I feel like there's a lot of that sort of going on. I feel like that's most studios anyway, but like that's kind of just the vibe that I get.
Yeah, I think it's probably a reasonably good assumption, honestly. That sounds very chaotic, to say the least.
All right, I gotta gotten better at that though. I mean, they grew so massively into a 100 plus employees company that I think a lot of the problems that we had with releases, how polished the release was, or like leak launch stabilities and all that, I feel like a lot of that will get better. I mean, this league was amazing from a launch perspective. I think very few bugs, very good stability. I mean, there was the T-pose bug, and I guess it's just my subjective experience. My subjective experience was really, I said that on Twitter, like the 9.2 out of 10 for the league launch, because it just worked. The mechanic felt smooth. But I don't want to dismiss that a lot of people had problems on league launch. But what I'm trying to say is that going forward, as they've probably, I mean, they're probably not as rapidly growing in departments and maybe like numbers. Yeah, sure. Like there's a new graphics guy who does stuff along the graphics team, and there's a new guy here or there. But as far as departmentalizing the company into different responsibilities goes, I think there won't be that many changes anymore, and they'll be able
Complete disagree. Complete disagree. They had their growth. I know we need to end soon. They had their growth completely kneecapped. Their plan was to expand. PoE2, bigger teams. Then COVID hit. All their overseas hiring failed. I know that because I was meant to be one of those, by the way. But like, they lost all the people they're meant to be bringing in. They've really struggled getting new people, and now there are like places like Rocketworks and big studios popping up in New Zealand poaching their staff. Like, what they wanted to do in terms of growth is completely just like. So yeah, I don't know. They're probably very desperate just to get new talent in and just waiting for COVID to go away so they can just like expand. I would say they're probably shrinking if I had to guess. Again, I don't know, but they've got a reduction in like available talent. And they've got other studios in New Zealand with a reduction to available talent. So I imagine there's just lots of happening.
We tell people to apply for jobs, but you can't fucking travel. That's the whole problem. Yeah. So, yeah, that's got to be rough.
Yeah, I mean, hiring for the Path of Exile design team would be a nightmare in itself, right? Who do you give that control to?
No, I agree in terms of numbers change directly, but what I was thinking in terms of breaking the company down to little things and how they communicate with each other, I think that the organization is catching up with the growth more rapidly during the last couple of leagues. And probably because the growth has been stunted by the global event that we were all partaking in.
Well, I mean, a lot of the development efficiencies are very boring things like, we've got a new process for this engine. We've got a new workflow, or we introduced Jira in our workplace. That's the stuff that they probably don't talk about and they don't show you. And that's probably the most important stuff for getting a league to not be a piece of shit, honestly, let's be real. So as long as they're trucking away with that, I'm sure that they'll keep improving.
All right. I think that's a great closing statement.
Oh, please, someone say something. Anyone else say something?
No, I think it's good that we end on a positive note. I don't think we want to say more. Did you want to say something still? Is there anyone who thinks there is anything that remains to be said?
Follow me on Twitter. I think that remains to be said. Otherwise, no, I'm good. You can end it.
I want to ask one question, and I've been thinking about this for a long time. Do you think Path of Exile needs physical damage resistance, like Lightning Rose, but Fizz? I feel like it's. No, we don't. Endurance charges don't count.
Okay, but there are other ways to get physical damage reduction. It's already a stat. Physical damage reduction is already a stat.
Yeah.
We just need more ways to get that stat.
Yeah, you're right. Give me more ways. I need more ways because it's annoying to get one shot by Fizz. I hate it. I
Yeah.
asked all the hardcore boys, and they're like, "Just get endurance charges. Just play Jug." I don't want to play a Jug.
Yeah. I think there needs to be more ways to get that stat, but it's already a stat. You can get it through auras from Guardians or Scion Guardians and endurance charges and flasks, and there's 4% rolls on rare gear and stuff like that. But there needs to be more ways.
I'll have you know they removed it from Basalt Flask, sir.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. It's not on the flask anymore. We need more ways, not less.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I really dislike 40 out of 60 charges flasks. But yeah, that's a topic for another day. Guys, I really want you to check out Grimro's excellent content on YouTube and on Twitch. You're streaming full-time now, so definitely go and support that. The content is really amazing and helpful. Even helped me. Well, I'm a scrub and I don't know much about software trade, so there's still even if I wasn't a scrub, there would be a lot to be learned from it, but as it is. Tarke is also doing very great stuff, as you may or may not have seen, but definitely check out the content there. Sub to his Patreon. Well, Tarke is doing build reviews on his Patreon.
Yeah, so I do build reviews. Personal. I do weather reports on YouTube. Yeah.
I like that one. I like the weather report.
If you want content which isn't necessarily Path of Exile, follow me on YouTube. Otherwise, just follow me on Twitter. Yeah.
Follow on Twitter for the cat pics. And Balor, what's your new big video coming out soon? You're doing an in-stacking guide. How to league start as an in-stacker.
How to not league start. I don't know. I've been hesitant to make new YouTube videos just because I guess what I need to do is stop reading the comments. I got crucified for liking the game on my last one. It made me less inclined to make another one. I think the answer is just turn off notifications for comments and just stop reading them. And then just make whatever the hell I want. I think that's the real answer.
I know we have to end soon, but I will just briefly say one of my biggest frustrations with being a content creator in Path of Exile for the last years has just been dealing with the negativity of the Path of Exile community. You just need to come to terms with it. It's always going to be like that. It's just like, it is what it is. So it sucks, but yeah. I got a lot of hate on my week one review for saying, yeah, I think logbooks are fun and Expedition is cool. Screw you, Tarke. How dare you like this video game? So.
Yeah. Tanky has expressed the same sentiment to me, where he's like, I'm not sure whether I should be making this video because I don't want to get all the downvotes and the negative comments.
You just have to do it. Just say fuck them, you know. Make the content you want to make. If you stand by your video, you stand by your video. That's anything that matters. And yeah. Just try not to be a dick, basically.
Awesome. So, thank you guys for joining. Thanks for being there. Thanks to the audience. If you guys missed the beginning of the podcast, this will be uploaded in full to YouTube, as always, and you can find us on all the podcasting platforms. And the next Fated Connections is, if we get it together, probably already in a week from now. I'm going to try and do a weekly one for the first month, at least, of this league, because there's a lot of ground to cover. There's a lot of new discoveries that we're going to make during the league, and this is definitely not the last discussion that we had about it. So thanks for tuning in, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Bye.